Welcome to this episode of The Edge, the podcast where Alison and I talk about all things teams and leadership. And today we're going to be talking about one of our favourite topics when it comes to teams, collaboration. Ali, do you want to start us off by talking about why? I think everyone knows what collaboration is, but let's talk about why collaboration is so powerful in a team context in particular.
Well, I think it's there's several things that make collaboration really powerful and indeed critical for success in teams. I think the one that people most of all think of it is the complexity of a task, that somehow the knowledge or skills or technical abilities or physical abilities, sometimes you need more than one person. So, it's like you need someone to hold the ladder while someone climbs up so the job can be done safely. But in complex problem solving, and particularly, as our world becomes more complex because there's so many variables that keep changing and need to be considered, you need more than one way of looking at it. So it's not just because it's one, sort of type of problem. Actually, many of the problems that we're trying to solve now are multifunctional. So you need people who've got different disciplines or different skills coming together to solve those problems. So I'd say that's probably what most of us think about when we're thinking about collaboration, is bringing those groups of people who've got different skill sets, different experiences, and we need everybody involved to sort out the problem and come up with the right solution. But I think collaboration,
and then execute on it as well. That's the other bit, isn't it?
And executing it, making it happen. Making sure those handovers in the value chain are seamless, so that I'm doing my bit, and then and then you can transfer, or you might be doing things simultaneously, so it then connects to happen. So there's lots of those reasons, but I think there's a couple of other things that play into why collaboration is important. I think working together builds greater capacity over a team, because we get a different understanding of what somebody's doing and how what you're doing relates to what their job is. So there's that sort of broader understanding of the bigger whole. It means that people can then cover for each other when someone's on holiday or sick or whatever. It means that people can grow and develop. So not just an understanding of your job, but you actually increase your own skills, which might be more useful in your own, responsibilities and accountabilities too. So I think it builds that. I think collaboration is also a human thing, and it feels good most of the time to work with other people and to get that shared understanding. And if we're talking about D&I, collaboration is a critical part of diversity and inclusion. It's that variation in thinking, perspectives, but also sharing those ideas and including and building on each other's ideas. So I don't think you can have a full D&I agenda without considering how you build collaboration in as part of that.
Yeah, I think at its core, collaboration is an inclusion activity, isn't it? I mean, you don't collaborate with somebody on your own. Like that's not possible, is it? You've got to include others in the process of collaborating. And so how you do that in such a way that it feels good, it adds value, it brings in the right people's strengths and skills to the process, I think is a really, really important one.
Though collaboration is not consensus. So collaboration is not a decision-making tool necessarily. So collaboration is about working together. So that might involve making decisions, but more often than not, it's about getting work done and understanding and having bigger perspectives and coming up with solutions and new innovative ways of doing work. So it's not about consensus, though. So it doesn't mean including everybody. It's who's the right person for the job and for what we're trying to do now. So I think, being mindful of who am I collaborating with and why, and do I need to collaborate on everything or just this piece of a task as well? So just because you're working on one bit doesn't mean to say somebody has to be involved in the whole thing. So I think there's something about mindfully thinking about what do I really want to, what's the added value here? Where do we need those different perspectives? And where can I really learn from this? And where can they learn from me? And I think it needs to be a mutual thing as well. You can't have one person getting all the benefits of collaboration and the other one going, well, that was a waste of time. That's not collaboration either. So it has to be a mutual win-win kind of, we're both learning, sharing, developing, growing, getting added value out of this task together.
It's interesting you're talking about collaboration not being about consensus, because I think this is a really classic mistake that I see a lot of teams making, which is thinking that they're not collaborating if everybody doesn't agree on something, on a decision that they're making, or the path for execution of a particular project. And so what happens is they seek consensus on everything, which means that they stray into a real pitfall or a trap of over collaboration. And that's when it feels tiresome to be part of a team, because you're in back-to-back meetings every day. You haven't got time to do your real work. You're meeting with people so much to try and create consensus that you're actually reducing your own capacity to be able to actually do something. The work still needs to happen, right? It's not just in those conversations that you're having with people that the work occurs. It's outside of those meetings. And so one really good question to ask yourselves as a team is, when are we over collaborating? Are we over collaborating here? Ali, what are some of the indicators of over collaboration in your opinion?
Overload. So people going into those meetings and coming out with a huge list of more stuff to do that they hadn't anticipated. I mean, I remember when I was in my corporate job, going into meetings and swearing to myself, I am not going to come out with any more tasks. And I ask myself now, why did I even go? I mean, so I was prepared to share some ideas and thoughts, but I didn't want any more work. I had enough on my plate. And so I was happy to share my ideas. So there's something about, why are you there in those meetings? And I think those are signals of over collaboration. When there's too many meetings, you haven't got any more capacity, and you're thinking, do not give me any more work. It's a problem.
And one of the things I look for in teams is, when are people actually doing the work? If they are sending emails late at night, and that might be poor discipline, but it might be a symptom of something that's going on in the team. If it's consistently happening as a matter of course across the team, that people are sending emails and doing their work outside of business hours, there might be an issue with over collaboration in this team. There might be too many meetings, there might be too many duplicated meetings, there might be inefficient meetings that are creating that are kind of a hamster wheel of activity, but actually not really achieving very much. So is there a more efficient way of collaborating, or are we even collaborating on the right things in this team? I think that's the other thing that I notice is that teams know intuitively that collaboration is a good thing, but then they think that you should be collaborating on everything.
Yes.
So there's something there, isn't there, about getting really targeted about, if we're going to collaborate in this team, let's do it in a really focused way on 2 or 3 things that are really going to make a difference to this organization. How would a team know what those things are?
Yeah, I think the team has to really think, why are we doing this bit together? And what is the output here? And does that output need all of us to create it and then, to your point, execute it? Because there might be a bit in the creation, but then one person does it. So sometimes you then see someone watching someone else doing it. It's like, what's that about? I mean, can't they just send a message, say I've done it, or copy in the result? So there's some challenges there that you don't necessarily need to be party to the whole thing. I mean, sometimes you might want to involve someone in that, but I'd say that's more of like training and development, where someone's watching and shadowing to grow and develop, but it's not real collaboration. And, it's not the same thing at all. So I think looking at, what am I really doing here? How am I adding value to this process? And how am I getting value from it? Are the questions that the team should be asking all the time. And if there's duplication going on, or that lovely little indicator inside, which is, I could be spending my time better. It's a great indicator we've got.
I'm
That's the
tempted to do
biggest
my
signal.
emails right now.
Yeah. When you're in a meeting and you're thinking, I'm just going to check my emails, then there's a sign that this is not the best use
You're
of
not
your
really
time.
needed in that meeting. It's not relevant. Yeah, totally agree. Yeah.
Our body knows.
Yeah, and I think that's another indicator, isn't it? So, noticing what you feel, but also starting to notice the behavior of others. If people are accepting other meetings instead of coming to that particular meeting, is that a signal that they're just not feeling that they're adding value, or it's adding value to them and the work that they're doing? So maybe there's some ineffective collaboration going on here, if not over collaboration. Because the other extreme, of course, of over collaboration is a lack of collaboration, and that's when we start to see silos happening, duplication of effort. We don't want either of those things. We want something in the middle, where collaboration feels powerful and value adding, and a multiplier effect of the outcome that we're able to create as a team, rather than a drudgery and oh god, I've got to be in that meeting, but it's really boring, and I might just use it as an opportunity to do my emails instead.
And some of the symptoms of under collaboration are things like being blindsided. How come you decided that, or you've done that? I didn't know, and that impacts me. Or somebody coming up with an idea and actually it's the wrong thing, or it's not fully formed, and then it needs to be reworked, because actually if they'd included everybody in the beginning, they'd have got all the different views. And history is ladled with examples, particularly in the marketing and product world, of products that are launched with really weird names, not fit for the market. And you think, did you not think to collaborate with someone in the local market to find out that car called Nova in Spain would be not a good idea? Ford, it's an old example. But those are times when you just needed another pair of eyes to look at it and go, I don't think that's going to work. Let's try a different. So I think those are times when there's symptoms where there's a lack of collaboration. And I know that there's a pressure in many organizations for individual execution and individual performance. And many people are measured on their individual results. So they can feel that it's going to slow them down to include other people. And they're not going to get rewarded for that. In fact, they might get penalized because it's going to take longer. So there's something in the environment as well, which is, how do you encourage people and build an infrastructure where people understand that you can collaborate, and it should, if it's done well, speed you up or keep you going at the same speed, but actually get you better results at the end. And that moving into,
because that is an objection people have, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the perception they have, which is, if I've got to include these people.
Well, they can be right. It can take a while, right? Depending on how, especially, like, I remember, the time in my corporate job, the organizations I was a part of, I'm guessing the same for you, Ali, was that they were very consensus-driven organizations, and the decisions were made by committee. We involved lots and lots of people. I worked in the group head office, and so we were working with all our operating companies. There was 24 of them, I think, at the time. That's a lot of stakeholders to manage.
Yeah.
And whilst unanimity wasn't necessarily expected, a vast majority of consensus was expected.
Yeah.
And the time that can take to go out and gather feedback and to hear their different points of view, and they're all different, right? The Japanese operating company was so different than the UK operating company, who was so different from the Dutch operating company, and so on. So they all had such different needs. Actually, what we ended up doing was very much a watered down solution often, because it's almost impossible to create a solution that fits everybody. And so collaboration in that example was really slow, really, really slow. And we were trying to be, and we needed to be, actually, because of the state of the market back then, a really fast-paced organization. And here we were, collaborating ourselves to death Was
Yeah.
that true for you in your
Yeah.
corporate
I
world as
mean, there was
well?
some of it would, some of the products would take,
Yeah.
12, 14 months to come to market. That's ridiculous. I mean, you needed to be able to get them through in about 3 to 4 months. And it was
Yeah.
because so many people needed to be informed. And I
Mm.
think there's something different about actually, being part of the creation and the innovation and the
Mm.
problem solving as is different from just being informed. And I think many of those organizations,
Mm.
what I learned was that if I somehow brought people up to speed and got them informed with where we were and made
Mm.
them feel comfortable that they knew enough, then they were fine if they weren't part of the big thinking piece.
Mhm.
So a bit like me saying, "Oh, I'll go to this meeting and share my ideas, but I don't want to do any of the work for it." So I think there were
Mhm.
lots of people who wanted to know what was happening and were happy to share their experience, but that's all they wanted, and needed some
Mm.
guidance. So I think it's being very intentional in those kind of fast moving, very
Mm.
competitive markets where you want to involve people, but it's being really intentional about what this person's bringing, why they're
Mhm.
collaborating at this moment, and when they just need to know, and
And when
informing
they
people.
exit for the process, right?
Yeah,
When at what point do we go, okay, thank you for your collaboration. Now over to us or to whoever to,
we'll
to, to
tell
now
you what the
create
next
something and
stages
execute
are,
upon it.
and that's it. But thanks,
Yeah, yeah,
your bit's done.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
think it's being much clearer. And I think most of the time when we're
Mm,
talking
mm,
to teams in collaboration,
mm,
it's very foggy and very
mm,
sort of
mm,
nobody, that people are just invited to the
mm.
whole thing, when in fact it's
Yeah.
not really the right thing to do. It needs to be chunked into what
Mm.
people really need to know and do and be part of and collaborate on. Yeah.
And usually I see that in teams. I don't know what you think about this, Ali, but I tend to see that happening. That kind of, okay, we're going from zero. It's usually when they've gone from zero, very little collaboration happening, working in silos and just kind of doing our own individual thing. And now they're kind of wanting to make that shift to collaborate, and they kind of try going from 0 to 100.
Yeah.
And they
And they
kind of,
involve
then they're over
everybody.
collaborating. Yeah. And then everyone goes, oh, no, let's just go back to the way things work because we were really effective then. I could achieve my objectives as an individual without all these meetings. And so then they don't do it. And so it kind of, they get burned by the process, which means that, it's a wasted opportunity there of seeing the
Yeah.
benefits of really true, useful, powerful collaboration and what that can bring.
And
So
I think we've seen a
how do
difference
you
with
know when it's,
hybrid. I was going to just talk about hybrid working and
go
the
on.
impact
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
had, because I think in the past, everybody would be working in their, individual stuff, doing their things. But at the coffee machine or lunch or whatever, they would be talking to people, or someone would pass their desk and you talk to them and you go, oh, that. And then you'd have a quick conversation in the hallway or wherever it was. And that would be it done. And or you could just whiz over to somebody's desk and go, by the way, and I'd like your idea, what do you think of this? And so it would be
A bit more
like a five
informal.
ten minute
Yeah.
thing.
Mm,
I think the problem with hybrid working and
mm,
is that it needs to be organized so much more. It's not that it doesn't work, it does. It just needs to be, you have to call them, right? So instead of walking
yeah.
across or bumping into someone, it's not difficult. You just have to press you know, come
Mm,
and join me on Teams. Are you free now? But somehow in our brains, that feels clunky and harder. And I think there's something there
mhm,
about we need to get more used to doing that fluidity of just,
mm,
oh, can I talk to you for a minute? Can you jump in here? And I think there's something as well that just when it's written, it doesn't, it's not as deep. You don't get to the point so
mm,
well. So I think it's about having more verbal conversations and using
mm,
technology and feeling that it's a bit more impulsive and a bit more just on the moment than maybe we're
mm.
using technology at the moment.
And that links nicely to what we call your routines as a team, isn't it? So,
Mm.
and what behaviours have you agreed are okay in this team? For example, it's okay to set to just set up a Teams meeting and call me into it. Some people see that's quite passive aggressive, but if you've got an agreement in your team that that's okay and that's how we work around here, to enable
Yeah.
those really informal, quick 5-minute conversations, otherwise would have been done at the coffee machine in the
Yeah.
office. you're kind of trying to replicate that in-person environment just in a different way, and the benefits that can come from that.
Exactly. Rather than thinking, oh, they're working from home, so I can't get in touch with them.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's that sort of, no, you can, but to your point, you have to have an agreement that that's how you're going to do it. And also, just as you wouldn't go and interrupt somebody who's on the phone or talking to somebody else at their desk, there's the same things there. You'd say, can I talk? Are you free? And check
Yeah.
in with them. So you're not just in, just like you wouldn't do in a face-to-face
Calling
environment.
you in. Step into my office, I want to talk about something. Yeah, that can feel a bit
Yeah,
much,
so it's
doesn't
not like that.
it?
So I
Yeah.
think that there's something definitely about the routines of collaboration and how do you include different people
Yeah.
in those collaborations. And I also think there's something, because I was saying about not involving everybody, but sometimes there can be some surprises. And so while you don't want to involve everybody in everything, I think sometimes just having a hodgepodge of people can give up some really different ideas and perspectives that you
Yeah.
hadn't even
Left
thought to
field, right?
consider.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And they
Yeah.
may say, oh,
Yeah,
I've
no,
got nothing
absolutely.
to
That often
contribute.
happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think then it becomes down to explaining why you've put together this group of people and holding that frame of, I'm looking for different ideas here. I've invited you, even though you don't really necessarily have a background in this particular project that we're doing. But I see a parallel with that other project that you worked on over there, that where you might have some insights as to something that might be useful to us, and love you to contribute. Feel free to say, this is not for me. I don't think I've got anything to contribute, and to leave the session if you want to. But having that contracting up front could be really powerful for creating a lovely collaborative session.
Yeah. And for saying, I want fresh eyes. I want somebody who's not
Mm,
been
mm,
part of this to have a look
mm,
and just ask some questions or share
mm,
some
mm,
thoughts. Because guess what? We might have something completely additional that's adding so much value that we'd never thought before. And
mm,
that individual will also learn from the process too. So remember, I said it needs to be
mm,
mutual. So the other person
yeah,
has to feel that it's going to be of interest to them and that they might pick up something that
mm,
they can take back into some of their work as well.
mm.
Mm.
What about what you collaborate on? I think we've established that collaborating on everything is not a good idea. This is the road to ruin for a team. This is the road to over collaboration and burnout in teams. In fact, I think one of the biggest contributors to the lack of resilience in a team can be over collaboration. I think it's an indicator if people are starting to burn out in the team, or you're coming back from the holidays still looking exhausted, for example. That could be a sign of over collaboration in the team. But how does a team know what they should collaborate on and what they shouldn't?
Well, I think the team actually needs to spend some time thinking about what do they do as a team.
Mm,
And understanding what each other are responsible for. So, if I understand all the clients that you work with, Jenny, and the kind of
mm,
responsibilities you've got, then I also know which things you might be interested in from my perspective. Now, you might be interested in more than that, and I might want your
mm,
contribution on other things. But a starting point, at least for the conversations, is I know that you like this stuff, and that's what you're responsible for. So, guess what? Anything that touches on
mm,
those things, you should be part of. So there's something that teams need to understand
mm,
about the results that they're after and the expectations they have as a team and of each other and who's working on what. Too many teams don't really have clarity about who works on what. So they either
yeah.
assume everybody needs to be involved in everything or they don't. So you get over and under collaboration happening. But then I think you can pick out where do we want to collaborate and specifically identify where there's some opportunities for collaboration. And it's rare that it's everybody in the team. You can identify which individuals, and so you create little clusters that work across the
Mm,
team. And that's when you get a really dynamic teams starting, because you start to have all these clusters across the team working together on very specific things, and they can see why they're working on that. They can see why they're being included, and people who are not included will see why they're not included and be like, yeah, that's okay with me. I don't have fear of missing out, the old FOMO.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's coming up for me as you're talking about that is the interdependencies that exist in teams as well. That's another way in which you can know when to collaborate with somebody and when not to. Is,
Yeah.
are they interdependent, or are we interdependent on each other in
Yes.
order to get our work done for this particular thing? In which case we should be collaborating with each other, because there's an impact there. If I do something in this area, it's going to impact them because we're interdependent on each other. So that's almost a must do thing. And then there's almost like a could do, like or should do thing as well. Like, where are the opportunities to collaborate that might open up different ways of thinking that we haven't thought of before? Right?
Yeah.
So there's multiple layers to this, I think.
Yeah, so there's looking at the tasks and the work. And so who's got the sort of interdependencies, who's working on similar things, or it's part of the same value chain or whatever. So there's that kind of lens on it. Another lens to look at collaboration is who's got certain skill areas that we want to pull together, or experiences that will be useful in problem solving or coming up or doing whatever it is. And so that's where you might pull people in as well, because you might say, well, we need someone who's really good at presentations, and we need someone who's good at analysis, and we need someone who's, really good at wordsmithing, and pull those people together. Or we want somebody who understands, the manufacturing process really well, and someone else who's got a creative bent. So pulling people because of their knowledge and experience and their skill set to work on something is another lens to put on it.
Mm-hmm. Anything else we should be exploring around collaboration, Ali?
What gets in the way, though? Why do people find it difficult to do collaboration well, though, Jenny? What's your thoughts on that?
Love that question. I think about that a lot. I think one of the things is under stress, we become more individualistic. So we protect, we get closer, we focus in on what we're doing. We don't want, talking to other people. It feels like it might just add to our stress in some way, add to the workload, as you talked about earlier with your example. So I think that if the conditions are quite stressful, if there's a high stress environment in your organization or in your team, you're probably going to find collaboration a lot harder because of that natural tendency to go inwards when we're under stress. So how do you calm down the stress response? And that's when we have the more capacity to open up and to be open to collaborating with others, to invest that time and see that might add value, to be more empathetic to other people's needs as well in relation to what we're doing. All of that starts to play a part in this. So I think that's the big one, I think, that gets in the way of collaboration. But I think also we're just not taught to collaborate well. Like if you think about our school system, and I'm universalizing this in my own experience across the whole world, so there might well be differences elsewhere, but my general experience of how school systems tend to work is it's about individual contribution, right? We're taught that working with somebody else is cheating. There might be the odd school projects and stuff, but let's face it.
And there's the relay.
It's about your
relay race.
Yeah, there's a relay race. Yeah, there's a science project you might work on with somebody else, but ultimately you're graded individually. You are not rewarded, on the whole, overall, for your performance at school and at university, for the work you do with other people. So it's drummed into us from a really early age that our success comes from our individual performance. So to then go into the work environment and go, now collaborate with people is what we expect of you. And okay, but I don't know how to do that. I've never really done it before well, and I've never been taught how to. I've never been rewarded for it. I'm probably still not rewarded for it in the context of this organisation. So why would I? Yeah, do you have team objectives, or do you have individual objectives? I bet it's mostly the latter. So there's a lot of contextual stuff that actually gets in the way of people collaborating well with each other consistently, even when the tensions start to rise, and then you add stress into the mix and forget it. And
I
for
think
you, Dad,
it's
Ali.
really true. Yeah, I think I mean, we've come across so many amazing, high caliber, high performing, incredible individual people who deliver fantastic results. And I just think, oh my goodness, imagine if you put all of those together like atoms and the energy they would create, it would be fantastic. I mean, the synergy that would be there. However, the organization, gives them their individual objectives. They might get their bonus based on their individual objectives and in a sort of forward thinking organization based on overall business results. So, but where's the team in that? I remember working with a lovely team. They were all amazing people. They had loads of stuff they all wanted to do. So they all had their own sort of huge projects that are going to deliver massive value and change for the organization. And they all needed each other to deliver theirs. But their overriding thing was to push their projects in first. And so it was, talk about sharp elbows. I mean, it was really the tough pushing hard to get in. And so it's a very, you talk about stress. It's like, I won't deliver my objectives if my stuff doesn't get in. And so you lot have to lie down and let mine in first. Oh yeah. And that means you haven't delivered yours, but we'll do yours another year. But that's not a good mindset, is it? It's definitely not going to create a collaborative environment. And what you then get is a lot of nothing happening because everybody's just so busy pushing their stuff in. And so none of it gets in properly and embedded.
And duplication of effort, I'm guessing, because they're not really,
yeah,
they're holding on tightly to their bit and the way they want to do it. And
they all liked each other socially, but there was no trust and very little transparency between them about what they were doing because it wasn't set up that way. And I think so there's something there about managing the overall objectives of the team. And I think that's the role for the leader, which says, what are we really delivering here? And sometimes the leader has to step in and say, this is the number one priority for the team. And I might have, that's Joe's individual objective, but Joe needs all of you to deliver it. And it's really important for us as a team that we do that. So actually your individual bits of that will all count in your own performance as well. So I think there's something that needs to be recognized about in collaboration about other people's ownership and contribution to maybe what looks like a big project for one individual rather than them taking it all for themselves. So we need to look at that piece a bit differently. And it might not affect their bonus. I mean, that's a whole different kettle of fish.
Yeah, another conversation.
Reward
right?
structures. Well, I was just going to say, I think collaboration is here to stay. The world is just getting more and more complex. And I think we actually, not only do we benefit from it, I think we actually enjoy collaboration. And so I think it's about making sure that we are not over or under collaborating so that we make the most of it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, collaboration is the cornerstone of society, ultimately, isn't it? I mean, without collaboration, we don't have society. It's just a bunch of individuals. So it's been the secret to our success as a species for millennia. So there's something about that. We do actually know how to do it. There's me saying that our education systems are probably teaching it out of us, but at our core, as a species, we do know how to collaborate, and it is actually when we're at our best as a species as well. So there's something in that, I think, to hold on to that we do know how to do it
instinctually.
Exactly. That brings us to the end of today's podcast, where we've talked all about collaboration, about how teams can under collaborate as well as over collaborate, and we want neither of those. We want just like Goldilocks, just the right amount of collaboration happening in a team to bring engagement and add value to the team and really create those better outcomes. We've talked about some of the conditions for that to happen, when you'd collaborate, when you'd not, the time it can take, and that being an objection for people and how you can overcome that. That collaboration is not about a consensus, it's about something else beyond that. So we've explored all the different facets of collaboration and much more So thank you very much, Ali, for a great conversation, and hope to see you all again soon.
Bye.